During a tonic-clonic seizure, the word tonic means stiff. So all the muscles stiffen during that part of the seizure, including the breathing muscles. When the breathing muscles are stiff, the person cannot expand their lungs, so they're not moving air, they're not oxygenating their blood, so they may start to look a dusky blue color. And that may continue through the clonic phase, and that word means jerking. And often the jerking movements stop. When they stop, the person takes a deep breath, which is the part of the brain trying to reestablish the normal concentrations of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. So that dusky blue color, what we call cyanosis, may be part of a convulsive type seizure.
My name is Ingrid Pfau. 6.5 years ago, the same semester I took my first filmmaking class, I started having seizures. Complex partial seizures, where I zone in and out of reality. Sometimes my right arm shakes itself up over my head. Is it a coincidence that when I started making films in sincerity, that I started having seizures? It's not something I want to confront. How can something I love doing be bad for me? I am looking for answers. I don't know anyone else with epilepsy. Even though I know I'm not the only one experiencing it, I feel alone. I feel like I have to meet other people with epilepsy to learn more about myself. Why would it be scribbles?
Because when I think of epilepsy, I think of a 5-year-old scribbling on the page. That's epilepsy for me. It's just a clusterfuck. When you're having a seizure, it's like one side is just misfiring constantly. So I think of just static. They call it grand mal tonic-clonic seizures. Started when I was approximately 12 years old. I actually came home with what I thought was a migraine headache and told my mom that I just needed to go lay down. And when I laid down, that's the last thing I remember. The next thing I remember, I saw a woman above me like freaking out, and I didn't know who it was. And apparently I started seizing, and I had wrapped my blanket around my neck. And so I was actually choking myself on my blanket the first time I had a seizure.
When I was 9 years old, in the 4th grade classroom, I had my first seizure. The class was presenting their reports on states. Each student had been assigned an individual state. Mine was Nevada, and as soon as I got up there, I started smacking my lips. My teacher noticed something was wrong, and I was unconscious. I could still move. However, I did not have any control over my body's actions. So she came up to me, held me close, and walked me back to my desk. And shortly after that, I fell asleep. And that was only the beginning of a long 3 years of suffering seizures and epilepsy.
My name is Jennifer Levine. I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I'm 37 years old.
Oh, I thought there was a big gigantic crab for a second.
I have 2 little humans. One is Jacob, who's 13, and Miriam, who's 9 years old.
I thought the English picture was just drinking tea. Well, we should do the pinkies out. Pinkies out.
I grew up in a very violent home. My father beat my mother beat my brothers. Apparently when she was like 7 months pregnant with me, he pushed her down a flight of stairs. She landed on her belly. She went into labor with me, Well, I was breached with a cord wrapped around my neck. Around 5, my mom said I started having nightmares where I would climb up the wall, and then they started happening in the daytime. They would turn the TV on, and maybe the TV would lose reception, and then as soon as it went shh, I was on the ground, and usually then my lips would turn blue, and I'd wake up in the pediatrician's office. It got bad. What would happen was I'd have a lot of them. They then would wait till any physical signs of abuse would go away, and then they would take me to the doctor. And then I think I left home around 16 and continued to have seizures, and then around 18, 19 they stopped, and then nothing until last March when I fell in the grocery store. And then they were trying to find the source of it, which they thought was a head injury, but then they said no, the only source they can figure out is the violence that I experienced as a child.
So how's it been going?
Well, this past week, 5 out of the 7 days, I had 1 seizure a day, probably.
Look over here. Look up.
Neurologists have never seen me have a seizure. Meeting all these other people with epilepsy gave me the courage to sign myself up to the UAB Epilepsy Center. While there, I was hooked up to an EEG 24/7 and not allowed to leave the room. A camera was always on me. When I went there, this past January, I was told that I would be there until I had 3 seizures, and that it would probably take 3 to 5 days to catch them. They recorded me having 5 seizures within 1 day.
So you get one of those big gulps.
This is one of them.
Okay. So do you work here at UAB?
I used to work at UAB
Okay.
for that place, the Spanish interpreter.
Oh, okay. Well, we might just hire you because we need you. And Tate over here, baby. You okay? Are you reading? Are you having an event? Did you have an event? No. You sure? Yeah, you had something. I'm just going to mark the tape, okay? Tell me your name. Can you tell me your name? What's your name?
There's something weird about watching yourself zone out on video.
Tell me your name.
It's something I've been waiting to see.
Huh? What's your name?
No one had ever caught me having a seizure on video before. Yes, plenty of people had tried to describe to me what I'm like during a seizure, but actually seeing myself zone out, become an empty shell without a brain that's functioning properly, makes me realize that I have a real problem. This video is a permanent memory now, even though I do not remember the actual seizure happening.
Oh, thank you. What happened to you? You remember? No. Okay, do you remember what you were doing?
I remember doing that.
Uh-huh. And you got all, look at your writing there.
I don't remember that.
Okay. I don't remember that. I'm going to let the doctors look at that. How about
I think as a child I had seizures, but I'd never realized that till I was in this field, and they stopped on their own at some point during my childhood, so they never came to medical attention. I got interested in neurology after realizing I was fascinated with how the brain works and what can be affected in epilepsy, things like our consciousness and our memory, our ability to speak, things that make us human. The brain clearly is so influenced by the experience that an individual person has, and therefore it becomes their own. And so you just can't simply swap out one for another. There are a limited number of types of seizures. The absence seizure, a very brief seizure, may only last a few seconds. The person is staring during it, I might have just had an absence seizure right there. If the person having a seizure is having a simple partial seizure, meaning that the individual is aware and just perceiving something internally, they may look like they're totally normal. The myoclonic seizure, which is one of the subtypes of the generalized seizures, is just a very brief twitching movement. So they might spill something that they're holding. Most people only associate a convulsion with epilepsy. The convulsion is the most visually dramatic type of seizure. The most common type of seizure in adults is the complex partial seizure. And that's when the part of the brain affected by the seizure disturbs memory formation, but not wakefulness. The individual might seem to have certain types of movements or behaviors, fumbling with a button, or chewing movements, or walking in circles, smacking of the lips, swallowing, spitting. And once they do retain consciousness again, they have no memory of anything that took place during the seizure because their record button for their memory was essentially not pushed.
Seizures aren't an often enough occurrence in the everyday routine for a lot of people, so when they see it, they don't know what to expect, they don't know how to judge it, but until they really get to know a person with epilepsy, they can't really judge.
The convulsive type of seizure is something that people have seen over recorded history and then some. And so there's been a long period of time during which epilepsy was seen, but without the medical understanding we have of it today. So many of those explanations persist today. So some of the more common misunderstandings are that a seizure is due to some evil spirit or some curse that literally seizes the person. Another common misunderstanding is that epilepsy is contagious, that you can catch it through anything from the saliva of a person with epilepsy, their urine, or just even looking at a person having a seizure.
I had a bad experience going to summer school, and I had made a bunch of new friends, and there was a cute girl that I liked at the time that was actually there too. And then I ended up having a seizure in that class, and then nobody in that class ever spoke to me again.
That's the thing that hurts the most, I think, about having epilepsy, is that it's almost okay to call them fits. I feel like I'm in a big body of water, and the water's right here, and I'm trying to get my head above the water, but I can't. It's just there. I'm trying to get just above. And sometimes I can hear everything. And sometimes I can see it. But I just can't get above it.
It's almost like I'm not aware of it, but I'll stop breathing. And by the time I realize that I'm holding my breath, it's usually too late. I become a prisoner in my own body because I will be sitting here being fine. I could be talking to you just like we are. And all of a sudden I'd stop. But my mind would be like, oh, it's happening. It's happening. And these guys don't even notice it. And then all of a sudden my neck is just constantly just going like this, trying to wind back as tight as it can. And then I'm out. And then I will wake up and I won't have a clue who anyone is. I remember waking up and I thought one of my best friend's mom was an angel because she was so beautiful, and I thought I was dead or something.
A seizure can be fatal, particularly a convulsive type of seizure. If a person has one and is face down in a pillow, they might smother to death. You know, they're riding a bike, they have a seizure, fall off in the middle of traffic, walk off a subway platform. Then there's a condition or a cause of death with, right now we call it SUDEP, which is a medical diagnosis that goes by a name that just describes what it is, and that is sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. But it doesn't describe what causes it.
They found out that my seizures are coming from the left temporal lobe, which controls memory. That's why I have a hard time remembering things. And from a softening of tissue in the left occipital lobe, which controls the visual cortex of the brain. My seizures are coming from what I look at. And filmmaking is one of the most visually stimulating things that I can do. Does that mean I should stop making films?
There's only one seizure that I remember. I was sitting on my living room floor playing solitaire. I began to smack my lips like I normally would before a seizure. And my mom noticed and asked me, okay, Chase, what is your name? And having stated my name in the question, you would think I'd be able to respond right back, but my response was black. In the back of my head, I could not think of my own name, and the only word coming to my mind was black. She asked me 5 other questions, black. And I woke up from it and started crying, and my mom gave me a hug, and she told me, we're going to fix this.
Epilepsy can be curable. And by curable, I mean that all symptoms go away and there's no further need for medication.
It got really bad. It got worse in September. It just kept getting worse. And then in December, like 3rd, the chief of neurology took over my case and said that I was having 1 every 15 seconds, according to the EEG. So they said that they wanted to try brain surgery, but the only thing they could do was this vagal nerve stimulator. And it's a small electronic device that's implanted into the muscle, just an intramuscular hair, and they wrap a little electrode around the vagal nerve, and you just swipe it, right? Because you don't want to hold it over that. And then what it does is it's stimulating. So it's stimulating the brain, but the vagal nerve runs right along your windpipe or your larynx. And so when it stimulates, it kind of takes away your voice a little bit. Now, if I had this up to the medicated level, my voice would sound like this every time it's stimulated, which kind of feels like someone's squeezing your throat a little bit, which makes it really hard to talk.
I had been seeing a local neurologist for probably a period just under a year before he decided that maybe me seeing if I could qualify for the procedure was the best option. Pre-op, they took out a portion of my skull, I'd say it was about yay big, and freeze-dried it. They had placed the grid on that section of my brain, done all the testing via electrodes and monitoring my seizure activity and normal activity and whatnot. I had been informed that only 2% of the people that test for the operation qualify, and of that 2%, around 1.5% come out functioning like they did beforehand with no symptoms of disorders or anything like that. And I'm one of the very lucky few that came out without any noticeable distinctions from before. There was scar tissue that had been caused by a grand mal seizure when I was an infant, and during it I had high temps of around 105, 106 degrees. So obviously it had made a big dent in my brain structure, and that was the cause of the seizures. They had concluded that they removed the lower left temporal lobe, the scar tissue caused from that grand mal.
I think it has affected me quite a bit, actually. Do you remember when you're driving down the street and there's like a row of trees and the sun's out, so it does like a checkered effect. And I used to love that feeling. Or like the feeling when you stretch really hard and then you get all tingly. I can't enjoy those anymore because somewhere in my mind, from the fear of having seizures, I think my brain mistakes those feelings as a start of a seizure to happen. And so I panic a lot now. Sometimes I prefer to stay home than to go out in public, because sometimes it feels like too much for me.
I used to compartmentalize. So I used to be like mommy Jen, teacher Jen, this Jen, that Jen, that Jen. I remember a faculty member in my doctoral program said to me, "So which Jen did you bring this weekend?" And now I'm so exhausted, the idea of compartmentalizing is impossible. And I think that having epilepsy really kind of made all those selves come together, and it puts you in a very vulnerable position. And I think if someone can love you through that very vulnerable time when your epilepsy gets chaotic, then it says a lot about them. Come on, buddy.
Wow. Look, I didn't even have to ask him once. He's up.
I think they've had to change. I'm gonna pray. I don't know. I think they've had to grow up fast.
After you. That's a snap.
They never knew, like, if they would come home from school and I would be on the ground, or if I just went down to get the laundry, if I would have a seizure down there. I think it really scared them. But some things they got to learn was, how to live without a car, how to live on a lot less, how to not take anything for granted, how not to leave mad anywhere. If you'll notice on our door as you leave, it's like there's stuff on our door that says I'm grateful, and you kind of live never really knowing if you'll see each other, or what will happen. Sometimes I think they feel like they're the only ones who are having this experience. It's all these complexities, and I think epilepsy is something that people still are very afraid of, and they think it's something that makes me unfit or makes me not able to take care of them. But I will go to the extreme. I did. I feel like this VNS is the extreme. It was the extreme to make sure that I was there for my kids. And, I think they saw that.
People with epilepsy shouldn't be defined by the fact that they have epilepsy any more than a diabetic, person with diabetes, but rather as somebody who happens to have epilepsy, but is also a gifted artist or musician or politician, or in spite of all their problems were able to run a marathon or come to the doctor's office by themselves finally. Whatever is their Mount Everest to climb.
At 10, I had the dream of becoming a rock star, and I did not let my disorder get in the way. I did not consider it a disorder. I just considered it part of me. But with the option of ridding of epilepsy, I took that chance. During my 4 years here at MSU, I studied classical guitar one-on-one with Professor Vidian, and it's definitely influenced my style and how I like to play.
I don't know, I think I'm jolly and easy, a laid-back person. I really don't know how to describe myself. But I don't think I mention any of my problems to anyone until they bring them up. Because I don't want that to define my life or define me. But I do take offense if people talk about it behind my back. But if you come up to me straight to my face and ask me why my arm is the way it is, or ask me about any of my problems, I'll let you know, and I'm okay with it, you know.
Admitting that my seizures are getting worse has been hard, but it's been worth it. I'm glad I know where they're coming from, but it's not going to stop me from making films. Films are more than just visual stimulation. They are my way of remembering things. Ever since I started having seizures, my memory has gotten worse and worse. Things just don't get recorded. It scares me a little bit, but I take comfort in knowing that whenever I film something, I can go back and look at it and re-remember what happened in those moments. Zoning in and out of reality and losing memory has been worth all the interviews and stories I've been able to record. When I film someone, something magical happens. All of a sudden, your differences don't matter. You can ask them anything you want, and they will answer you as though they've known you their whole lives. Social filters are lost. All of a sudden, they're your friend during those moments. I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like I'm finally emerging from my sea of questions and catching my breath. I know why I have seizures and why I love filmmaking. And that's enough for me, for now.